Going to move on to our next guest, who needs no introduction. It's your friend and mine, former White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, always great to have you on the show. Now, the midterms are fast approaching. Republicans think there's going to be a Democratic bloodbath, but I'm not so sure. Do you think that Republicans are getting too comfortable too soon in this election?
Yeah, James, as always, great to see you. Thanks for having me. I don't think it's a question of too comfortable. I think it's exactly what you hit on in your opening monologue. They're sort of getting away from the winning argument and not talking about the failures of the Democrat administration, the Democrats in the House and the Senate, and talking a little bit too much about Trump. And they're making it about Trump. And that can be dangerous, or at least difficult to win in those critical swing districts. You and I both know some districts are absolutely going to be Republican, some will absolutely be Democrat, and the control for the House and Senate is fought over these swing districts and these swing states. And they're getting sidetracked a little bit by Trump, and Trump is helping them do that to a certain extent, sending out notes in the middle of the night about redoing the 2020 election instead of talking about how bad inflation is. So no, I don't think they're getting lazy. I don't think they're resting on the laurels. I think they're losing focus. That being said, James, I just don't get a feel that it's that tight. Yeah, there's a lot of bad media reports about some of the Republican candidates. It looks like Dr. Oz, the television celebrity, is doing better in Pennsylvania in the last 2 weeks. I've seen a poll as recently as today that says Herschel Walker is statistically tied in Georgia. He was down a little bit a couple weeks ago. So I think it is tightening. I think you're right, but I don't think it's fair to say that the Republicans are finished quite yet.
No, I don't think they're finished, but I just wonder why they're not making more of a big deal about things like, say, the student loan bailout, which is just going to be transferring wealth from the 2/3 of Americans who didn't go to university to the 1/3 who did.
It's hard. But when President Trump, who is still the nominal leader of the party, the de facto leader of the party, talks all the time about the FBI and all the time about the 2020 election, especially, it takes up the oxygen. It takes away attention from the things that reminds people why they don't like Democrat control in the first place. So, yeah, they're going to have to figure out a way to get back to those messages, because if they can simply ask the question, are you better off than you were 2 years ago, the overwhelming majority of the country would say no, and they'd be looking for a change in leadership. There's still plenty of time to do that. I think we're about 10 weeks away from the election, so there's plenty of time to get back on message. But it looks like they may have wandered off the reservation a little bit here during the month of August.
Now, talking about Joe Biden, of course, his big push is to say that Republicans are now fascists or semi-fascists or whatever. And this doesn't seem to be very much in the spirit of his bringing the American people together during his election back in 2020.
Yeah, keep in mind, that message didn't sell. His message in 2020 was he wasn't Donald Trump. No one voted for Joe Biden. People either voted for or against Donald Trump. So he was never really bought into that idea of bringing the country together. I think Joe Biden of 20 years ago probably might have been able to do that, but he's a very weak leader. Again, he didn't have any coattails at all because of the way the election ran out. So he doesn't have the ability to steer the party. So the party is steering him, and the left is the ascendant power right now. The progressive movement is the ascendant power within the Democrat Party. Ron Klain, the current chief of staff, is probably doing more to run the country than anybody else, including the president, and he's a hardcore left-winger. So that energy, the leadership of the Democrat Party is hardcore left progressive. The president is very weak politically, so he's simply voids get filled, and it's being filled by the progressive left right now.
So is that progressive left there with the student loan bailouts, with all the talk about the Roe v. Wade and abortion issue, and, of course, calling the Republican right fascists? Is this all just about a strategy to get the base out and to get them to vote and try and make up the numbers on the day?
That's exactly what it is. Keep in mind, and I know the folks watching this have to vote. By law, we don't have to do that. So oftentimes, elections are less about convincing people who might be in the middle to vote for you instead of the other guy or gal. It's more a question of, can we get our hardcore supporters to get off the sofa, especially if they're not particularly happy with the way the party has been going, and can you get them out to vote? It's a get out the vote effort, and we spend millions of dollars, tens and hundreds of millions of dollars on it every single year. So that is the rhetoric that you will see to motivate the hardcore left. Anybody who thought that maybe Biden was a little too centrist, if you're a hardcore left-wing progressive, maybe he hasn't delivered on a lot of his promises. But now here, there's nothing like calling Republicans fascists to get those hardcore lefties into the ballot box.
That's right. Mick Mulvaney, thanks so much for your time, and we'll see you next time, and we'll see you here in a few weeks for CPAC.